Then another theme that emerges that goes all the way through the rest of your career really is your commitment and interest and involvement with the community. So I'd like you to talk how that started and how you
Well, it started in Watkins Glen.
Yes, I can
shoveling.
see that. Shoveling snow.
I'm still shoveling, but I'm not going to describe what I'm shoveling at this point. With all due respect to this wonderful faculty sitting out here to the right. Excuse me, Jonathan and Rich or whoever's out there. But so I shoveled. I've been shoveling for years.
Those cookies.
That's right. That's good. Yeah, that's right. Chocolate chip were my favorite. But the current, well, Carol, help me on this. When I was in adolescent medicine, I knew you can't do adolescent medicine without knowing your community, knowing the teachers, knowing the community well. The community we're in is only about 300,000 people. It's sort of a replica of a bigger Watkins Glen in terms of really, you see, airport, you know everybody and all the rest. So I felt that I really had community service, so I'd go out and very early on, went to the schools, learned all what was going on out there, went to the philanthropic organizations, always asking for money. Does that sound familiar to all you trying to run programs? And then when as chair, we were given the privilege by Dr. Stein to run the first ever campaign for the Children's Hospital. Well, people just absolutely poured out buckets of money. We raised for Rochester during the time Kodak was not doing too well. We raised, what was it, $42 million in 3.5 years. And people really were kind. I mean, they'd open up their pockets and run all these things, and it was quite something. So we were out in the community a lot. I never forgot, though, my first role as pediatrician in chief was to take care of those patients every day. So I always go to morning report. I try to know all the residents. Because groundedness is important. You need to remember we're physicians first. You can fundraise, you can be out for 100 chicken dinners and 50 nights or whatever else, but you better get back there and reinforce what your role is, and that is to make sure that every child for whom you're responsible has the best outcome. And if anything happens on that service, I think the buck stops with the pediatrician in chief. I'm looking at Mary Ann. So Mary Ann, that's what my feeling is. But so as much as we got out there, and I was out there a lot, I kept reminding ourselves, that community service is critical, but I'm getting paid for this job of making sure that the quality of every effort that we make, particularly our patient care, is impeccable as we can make it. And the hardest thing I struggle with is mistakes happen. And it's often systems problems, but that really weighs very heavily on my shoulders. And it's one of the reasons I want to now step out of the chair, because I keep saying to Carol, it is 24/7. So community is important. Lots of friends in the community, obviously. I've been there for so long. And they sort of now look at me like Methuselah, Sharon. You know, they say, hi, Dr. McAnarney. And the dean says, hello, Dr. McAnarney. I say, oh, my Lord, call me Lissa. You know, please, because they're getting younger and younger, you see. So that fabric of the community in Rochester is really magnificent. We're just very blessed, because it really is quite a small town. With big town.
You mentioned about your decision between your career and marriage. And
and this one I do want to share. It's personal, but important. In our family, it was okay not to marry. That's why I started with the Irish business. And women had careers as teachers, and happily so. When you hear about these cast of characters, they really sounded quite independent and quite capable. And I realized very early on, I knew that I wasn't the brightest star on the group. You know, these people in college just go, and they got everything. I'm going, Chaucer said this. What are you saying? I was probably developmentally about 15. So I said, Chaucer really said that? You know, and they said, no, this is like allegory or something. I don't know, something sophisticated. So I knew that I'd not be able to do everything I wanted to. I knew that women at the time, the people who are here can either confirm or debate, that when we took slots in the medical school, we had people say to us, well, you sure you're going to finish? This is a slot that, you know, maybe somebody else would go through. And the implication was, with all due respect to our wonderful male colleagues, the men finished, more men finish. It didn't always happen either. However, we really had this unique situation, at least I did. We had a small class. We had 100 people, 5 women in the class. Remember, I went from the convent to the monastery, and so I had a great time. I said, this is pretty good. You have 2 dates every night, you know, and You used to have one at 8 and one at 10. It was pretty nice. So I loved that. I mean, that was good. But meanwhile, I was studying, saying, oh, geez, this is hard. You know, how am I going to get through this? And so I realized when I saw people like Dr. Richmond, saw what they achieved, I said, I can't do this. And as a pediatrician, I said, how do I leave home and leave children? Because I had a mother who was home. Now, that was very limited, but that was my life. So I said, I don't think it's fair. So I thought about it, and I didn't brood upon it very often. I remember somebody asked me to marry him, and I looked at him and said, oh, Lord, I'm not ready. Go. You know, go find somebody. He did. About a year later, I was happy to go to his wedding. I mean, it was great. So, I mean, the thing is, am I unhappy about it? Well, I pause every so often because I don't have a whole generation of lots of little ones from our family. But you know, our genes have some things in them that might be just as well not to have them passed on. I mean, what do I know? You know, we're all 100% Irish. And it's like a racing horse. You know, you got arthritis, you got all this stuff and other stuff. But anyhow, so years went on, began to have all these wonderful young people. And one day, the cleaning lady said it all. So I'm now about 60, and I'm walking down the hall, and I see Rosie, who I've known for 40 years. Happy Mother's Day, Rosie, did I say to her? I've known her forever. And I thought, I don't think Rosie has children. I said, Rosie, did I hurt you? Do you have children? She said, yes, I have one daughter. Well, I knew Virginia had 9, and somebody had fewer, and they were friends. They had a little room that they hung out in and whistled to each other. So it was a whole system. So she said, Happy Mother's Day, Dr. McAnarney. I said, Rosie, I don't have children. She said, yes, you do. You have all the strong children. I said, that's the issue here. So I did make a conscious decision on the corner of something in Krause Avenue in Syracuse, and the person went happily on. And I've gone, I hope, happily on. It's not a model for the future, I don't think, or maybe it is, I don't know. But I worry about our young people, our young men and our young women who are trying to do it all. I couldn't do it all. I haven't done it all. And I feel very fulfilled, and I feel very fortunate. But I'm not saying to other people I think it's a good way to go, because there is a downside. You know, I travel, for example, a lot alone, but I travel all over the place because I didn't worry about having to get back for the little one. So I've had a very sort of, in a way, selfish personal life, and rather, in a way, reflective. But remember, there are monasteries and there are all sorts of things in our past, not in our past, we didn't have anybody in the religious, but there's sort of an ecology that made this quite acceptable. So it is different, but I don't know. You probably don't know what you're missing kind of thing, but it doesn't really bother me at this point. No.
Now, you had a physician talk to the residents about her.
Oh, yes, and some of you know her. She's now in her 80s. Very, very accomplished woman, had 9 children. And our 3 women residents, I really wanted them to spend time with her because she obviously had to juggle. She never had any household help. So the next day I went to see them and I said, how did it go? And they said, you don't want to hear. I said, oh, great. I said, we don't really want to tell you because we don't want to hurt you. I said, if you don't tell me, we don't have a very good relationship. So they told me basically, they felt it was quite irrelevant what she said. They didn't see a problem. And I said, well, bless you, because there are many women who are very happy to hear that. But please, keep it in front of you. Because if you don't nurture it, it could disappear. And if you're taking, now I knew in our community we had, and I'm going to say young women because it's what it is, who've taken jobs and practices and then have dropped out after a couple of years, after the partners made big sacrifices. It's not going down well. One of my colleagues said to me the other day, listen, I've tried so hard. I'm not happy, and I'm afraid our recruitment's not going to be too supportive. So what I'm saying, this story is not over. I think anybody who knows us knows that we struggle a lot with this, and I don't know what the formula is. I marvel at some of you who do this very well, but I don't think there's any perfect formula. And it's okay not to do everything at the same time. You can't be all things to all people. And if you want to be a super parent, you need to do it, and do it for a finite period of time, come back to the profession. So I have some opinions, and I'm probably part of the dilemma of older years is you got opinionated, but I think you have to go into this with your eyes open.
That's not wisdom?
I don't know. I think it's opinion. So I like to say I make this, here's my hypothesis. But I do think that your lives are going to get more complex. Academia is getting, it's still a challenge. Practice is a challenge. Hours are finite. You have to make choices, and that takes me back to the World War II thing. We had to make choices. Were you going to use that gasoline to go to the lake, or were you going to use it to go visit people in town, to do your charity. I mean, you didn't have it all. So we came from a time when you had to make some choices, and then you live with them. That's life, yeah.
When you were president of SAHM and other times,
Yeah.
you're known for some phrases. So I'm going to list them and then I'd like to comment.
Fix it,
One
Carol.
of them is to walk tall,
Fix it,
as
Carol.
many of you know. Another one is doing broad strokes. I remember when you were president, you said, we need to step back here and we need to do the broad strokes on this. And then the other one is your 30,000-foot view of things.
Yeah,
Those are three famous kind of phrases that you've used.
And you've forgotten one, and I don't know if there's anybody that remembers. Please don't feed or eat the goldfish.
Oh, the goldfish.
And if Stan Friedman, that was one of my academic papers in this place.
Yes,
Stan
you
Friedman
did write
walked
an
in with a
article.
goldfish. I don't know if Mary Ann or Iris remember the goldfish
Yes, I
arriving.
do. It was in
I said, how am I going to get these goldfish home? But this is part of the love of the society. One of the things I felt in the mid-'80s that the society was suffering from was a poor us syndrome. And that was, nobody likes us. Well, that's changed a lot because of the boards and a lot of the things, the science, the good work that's been done. However, I think there's several lessons to be learned. One is, I used to say, walk tall, because I felt we would go, present ourselves to outside groups. You know, you may not know us, and we really only meet it once a year, and well, what do you do? Well, I don't really know what we do, but we really care about kids. So, hey, that's not going to go. If you're going to go speak to the people, where some of our members now are leaders, like Maternal Child Health Bureau, et cetera, you need to have an agenda. You need to know what you're doing. You need to be proud of what's been accomplished. Be well prepared. And then we would get caught up, as we do in our department all the time, on all the details, because it's sort of fun to swim in details. And we'd lose sight of the fact that we had come a long way as a society from 1968, Edie, to 1984, whatever it was. And look at those accomplishments from the broad point of view. Don't get mixed up. I remember visiting Dale in Los Angeles. We were out there at John, had that beautiful house in San Francisco. John Peel was in San Francisco, but he was down in Los Angeles visiting. And Dale kept, when we were meeting, kept saying, think about it broadly. And that really impressed me. Dale wasn't caught up in, at least as I remember that one random memory, in the sort of the nitty-gritty. He was really pushing us to think more broadly. And so it appealed to me, because if you step back and say, what progress have we made? How have we done it? How have we done it? And then what are the next steps forward? And stay at what I tell Rich all the time, the 30,000 feet level. Then you see the panorama, and you can always put the trees in and the lights in later. But you have to see it. And you have to have a vision that says, this is a little high risk out here at the edge, but we're going to try it anyhow. So as we reflect on, for example, our society here, I think the question is, and I would challenge you, and some of you know I like to do this kind of thing, say, okay, what risks have been taken recently? The big risk for us was to break from the AAP, Mary Ann, and have a March meeting, and Sam to get computers. Oh, yay. Edie, those computers. And Sam said, Lisa, I said, we need computers. He said, he was a secretary, or he was a treasurer. We can sell them if they don't work. Good. And that was a big risk. But let me ask you what your big risks are right now. Where are you hanging out there and saying, if we fall, well, we're among friends and we'll stumble and we'll stand up again? I mean, what are those risks? We're not talking, you just had this future plan that Andrea has led, you're working on, and Rich kindly shared it with me. And I do look, I said, where are the risks at the edge here? What's being done? So I called Rich and said, come on, we got to reenact some of this business we were talking about in 1984 about, for example, why is the society not in a position to apply for federal grants? Yeah, we discussed 20 years ago. There's vitality there. There are other groups who do this. Well, there must be something in our minds that says that's risky. Well, let's talk about it. And if it is risky, let's walk up to it. There are a lot of those things that we all have to deal with. But the walk tall was be proud of what's been accomplished. Look how far you've come now in the last 22 years. I hear there's 700 people at the meeting, Edie. Unbelievable. But is there a risk taker out there? Not the kind of risk behavior we talk about scientifically. I know that one. All you see is not what you get, right? But But that was what that was about. It was trying to get us in to the mainstream and then be prepared